Hi there guys, welcome to the Sage Gaming News. Necromunda is considered by many to be among the best games that Games Workshop has ever produced, and it is a game of gang warfare set in a huge hive city in the 40k universe, and it's persistent, so the gangs fight each other. And as your gangers do well, they increase in their skills, but they can also suffer permanent injuries or death. So you're trying to build this squad up by gathering loot, by killing others, by acquiring territory and stuff like that. So recently we had an announcement that there will be a Necromunda PC game. It'll be done by Rogue Factor, the same company that did Mordheim, under the guidance of Focus as a publishing company. And at the Focus press event in Paris, I talked to Guillaume Voghel, the producer for the new Necromunda game, about what the game is going to be like. So go ahead and have a look. Sorry about the conditions, the lighting and audio are not ideal.
So hi.
Hi, Guillaume.
I'm the Sage.
Good.
Thank you for agreeing to talk to me here.
Oh, absolutely.
So could you tell us a bit about Necromunda?
So Necromunda is a really interesting IP from Games Workshop. It's set in the Warhammer 40k world, but where 40k is more about space marines and combat and spaceships.
Serious armor and troops.
Necromunda is just a giant planet where there's countless numbers of hives. So there's like about 6 miles high towers, and their only purpose is to manufacture everything that the army is using, and for the empire. So you have those giant manufacturer factory cities that are gigantic, and Necromunda Underhive Wars, our video game, takes place in Hive Primus, which is the biggest one on the planet.
And that one hive has as many people as a normal planet does, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. You have like billions of people, and it's absolutely mind-boggling in terms of scale. And so the hive is just like a giant mouth. And Hive Primus also hosts all the main houses. So it's basically the center of government of the entire planet. And our action takes place in the Underhive, which is that part that's derelict, mostly abandoned, but there's still some people living and getting by. And there's a lot of gangs just roaming around in the Underhive. It's completely lawless. And then there's major fights happening, and there's a lot of gang wars basically happening over there, and that's where we want to take the action.
And so these gangs are from the houses that were in the layer above, right?
Yeah, exactly. They do missions or gather resources for the houses, and they're mostly connected to them, but also at the same time they have a lot of freedom because it's completely lawlessness. So their only goal is to gain enough money and resources so they can actually retire in the upper portion of the hive.
So what I noticed going through the tabletop rule set is that there's a lot of lore, there's a lot of background, there's a lot of feeling to it. But all of that plays very little role in the Necromunda game if you're playing it.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering how much of that lore and how much of that story will find its way into the PC.
Well, that's a really interesting concept, because part of making a video game is the environment, the visuals in which you're into, and that's something we want to try to achieve, is to give a sense of scale and a sense of idea of what is going on. So we're thinking about environments where you're going to see huge manufacturers of gigantic equipment. When you look at the Warhammer 40k universe, even the gun cases for the giant guns for the battleships are just gigantic. So you might
those have to be built somewhere.
Exactly,
and
that's where we really try to explore this, while still following the lore very closely. But storytelling through environments is going to be incredibly important in our game.
Yeah. So I think in all 40k content, but mostly in Necromunda, terrain is going to play a really big role.
Yes, because one of the big features of the tabletop game was verticality. It was a very vertical game, and that's something we want to try to reproduce. You leverage that verticality into a video game setting, and you can expect that there's going to be the geographical, 3D geographical way of doing the battles is going to have an impact, a significant impact on the game.
Involving higher ground bonuses,
Higher ground.
Falling, I guess.
We can't really go into the details because we're still in pre-production, but we definitely want to acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of verticality in those environments.
So, how closely do you intend to follow the rules from the tabletop game?
So that's the most difficult aspect of making a Warhammer Game Workshop video game, right? And we learned a lot with Mordheim about taking something that works really well on the tabletop version and then bringing it to video games with all its constraints and also opportunity that it has. And so we've been really working very hard on taking the tabletop version but adapting it to a video game, making sure that it stays true to the essence of the game, but also makes sense as a video game. That's not just a direct port.
Yeah, because a lot of the rules make sense because things have to happen in a certain order because you have to keep in mind what you've already done.
Exactly.
That kind of stuff you don't really need.
Exactly.
So the phases where you have to have everyone move first and then have everyone shoot,
exactly.
That's something you don't really need in a PC game.
So we're still, again, it's difficult to go really down into the gameplay features because we're still developing it, but we really want to acknowledge those rules, but at the same time make sure that when people play, they really play like they're feeling a video game. And even if you haven't played the tabletop, that you could actually be picking up the game, and if it's your first encounter with Necromunda, you're going to be able to play with it properly and have a lot of fun.
So one thing I was wondering is, like in Mordheim, you have the different war bands, and they have very different characters. They have very different feel. They're different races, like in the Warhammer universe, like in Blood Bowl. And 40K has that as well. But Necromunda, you have the houses. They have a different feel. They have a different look, but they don't really have very different stats. Right? They have some different starting equipment. That's about it. So how do you make sure that the game has enough diversity?
Yeah. So, as you said, there's huge diversity in the gangs. You have the Eschers that are super, it's only women, and they're very strong, and they have like a very different feeling. And you get the huge Goliaths, and then the Lack who are more stealthy. So there's definitely ways to have different gangs and different playstyles. That's something we're looking into. We cannot really go into the details, but we want to make sure that it's not only going to be skins. It's not only. It's going to go further than that, and that the gang you're going to be playing is going to have an impact on your playstyle.
So what I saw in the rule set is that the different gangs have basically the same stats but different skill access.
Yeah.
And I think skill access is probably the main way you would define a gang's character. But also in the board game rules, you only choose which skill group you get, and then you get a random skill from that.
Yeah.
Is that something you intend to keep?
I cannot go into details on that. You're well informed.
I figured I should be a little bit prepared.
Our designers are very knowledgeable in the entire into the entire rules of the tabletop game, and definitely we're considering all options. And to us. Character progression is very important, and we're going to make sure that as your character gets more experience, there's a nice progression arc, and there's a tree in which you can develop your character. How we do this, we still want to keep it on the wrap because it's a very tricky balancing aspect, right? And we want to make sure that it works and it feels really good before
if you say A and you wind up doing B, then people will be disappointed.
Exactly. It's our main priority right now. It's just taking those stats and making all this design that's been done and actually trying it and iterating on it.
So another really relevant question is, so I consider Mordheim to be a single-player game first and a multiplayer game second.
Yeah, quite a bit so.
Yeah, because I think that's kind of a missed opportunity.
Absolutely.
In the sense that these games, when you play them single-player, they become more repetitive, and you kind of know what the other guy's going to do. Yeah. But in multiplayer, that could be really interesting.
It's something we've noticed with Mordheim is first of all, there's people who have put hundreds of hours in the game and they love it because there's so many replayability in terms of possible builds and possible strategies. But one thing we've noticed also is that the community is strongly in favor of multiplayer, and there's something that feels really good in playing with your friends and destroying your friends.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's persistent, that injuries stay, makes multiplayer so much more meaningful. Like you see in Bloodbowl, for instance, the fact that you know that you're always taking a risk, and that the other guy is risking his life or his player's life. So do you think with Necromunda that multiplayer will have a more central role?
So we don't want to go too much into multiplayer. We're keeping tight wraps around it, but I can say that we completely acknowledge this passion that people have for multiplayer, and it's definitely something we want to look into offering a really good multiplayer experience and making sure that you can take your gang and play against your friends in a very meaningful way.
Yeah, I think personally, if it were if you play multiplayer, you need the option to play a team that has only played multiplayer.
Yeah.
Because if people can make their squad or their gang as optimal as they can against the computer and then play multiplayer, that feels like cheating.
Yeah.
So I think if you want to have this kind of multiplayer only league or campaign setting, where you know that if you hurt your friends, then they'll struggle in the next one.
Absolutely, that's actually a great idea, and it's something we've seen happening on Mordheim. The community has been doing tournaments where they restrict the rules on what you can do with your warband. You cannot use it offline. It needs to be super regimented, and I think it's a great idea. It's definitely something where we're going to look into for sure. It's still very early to say exactly what multiplayer is going to be, but we're very we have all our ears open about what the community is doing with Mordheim, and that's really shaping how we want Necromunda to be.
Because a lot of people I spoke to said, well, I really just play single player, whereas I think it's a game that has a lot of potential for multiplayer.
Oh, absolutely. We're incredibly excited about having a very strong multiplayer, and that's part of the strategy.
Another question that I had was about cosmetics, because a lot of these they have different looks, the clans, but you don't really have the different races. So will we see a lot of ability for players to customize how their gangers look?
Yeah, absolutely. Customization is such a huge part of any Games Workshop franchise, right?
Yeah.
And we want to make sure we even take a step a bit further than Mordheim, make sure that there's more customization options. It's always a little bit difficult because we're a small studio, so the sheer amount of the assets to make makes it difficult for us to go completely crazy with customization. So we want to make sure that you're going to be able to have your gang customized the way you want, and that when you enter a playing field against an opponent, you clearly have belonging to your gang. Visually, it looks as you wish.
Yeah, I think that's right. It is, of course, one thing that lends itself well to microtransactions.
It does, yeah.
Let me quickly see if I have others. I think I have some more questions. This is so you will probably the phase mechanic that has movement and firing separate. That's probably something that's going to go, right?
I cannot really go too deep into the nitty-gritty of the gameplay phase, but I can say that we want to give a lot of options and want to make it offer a flexible game to the players. And as you can see in Mordheim, it's you have a lot of freedom into what actions you're doing at what times, and that's definitely something we wanna. It's something we're good into. It's something we're probably gonna want to go further towards.
So in Mordheim, stealth plays a very big role. Not knowing where your ability is used. And in Necromunda, you have that mechanic, but that's an in-game mechanic where the players still know where the miniatures are. You just don't have the ability to attack them because they're hidden.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about how that's going to work? Whether stealth will be player information or in-game?
You're asking tricky questions. since the environments are going to be fairly big, you can expect that we're not necessarily going to hide units, but seeing units from afar is going to be something a little bit more difficult. And definitely there's going to be, we're looking into ways of using the fog of war as a gameplay element. That's as far as I can go, because I don't want to put our designers on in the hot seat. But they've been looking at it, and we've been really trying to see how we can do it. Where it may be through skills or through other ways, it has to be defined.
The initiative stuff. So part of the reason I'm asking is I would love to play multiplayer, but I also live stream.
Yeah.
And for me, the idea of doing more time on the live stream wouldn't work, because if the other guy watches my stream and knows what I'm doing, then I've already lost.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm very curious to see how that would work out. I mean, obviously you could use a long delay or just do it on YouTube and stuff. But
we're actually trying to, because the streaming community is growing so big that we definitely want something that's going to be friendly to streamers, but at the same time we want to make sure we don't
cripple
the experience. Exactly. So it's a very tricky thing to balance, and it's something we really need to iterate on and play with the game before, just to see if it's going to work or not. So we're still in the very early phase of the game production. So it's something we're going to definitely look into and play with, but still has to be completely different.
Yeah. So about the setting, will the politics between the houses play a big role in the game?
We do want to give you the feeling that there's houses and that gangs are attached to houses. Politics is part of the lore, so you can expect to see some way of acknowledging that.
Yeah, it'll be in the background. It's part of the story, but it's not something you focus on then.
Well, once you're in game and you're fighting against a gang, politics go off the board, right? You don't really care about them anymore. So there's going to be this thing. How exactly we include them in the total experience, it's difficult for me to say at this point without revealing too much. But definitely we're very aware that politics is a big thing on Necromunda.
You're here to reveal things, right?
We're here to reveal things, but at the same time we don't want to... The community is so passionate about this that we need to be very careful to which ideas we put in front of everyone before we've actually completely designed that idea, right? So it's a very tricky balance in that regard.
So you mentioned once you're in game and in a battle, then it's just focused on the battle and the goals. Can you tell me a little bit about the shell around that, like the campaign or the territorial aspect of the game?
It's very difficult for me to go into details on that. It's not going to be only battles. We want to go a little bit further. You're going to be building your gang. You're going to be customizing your gang. How your gang interacts with everything else, I really cannot go into details on this. But we have plans to give you a wrapper around and make sure that it's logically cohesive with everything, rather than just going to a battle and just grinding. It's going to be so.
Because that's one thing that I think Mordheim had the battle aspect really well done, but the meta aspect of gathering weirdstone and of which missions you do when, there wasn't all that much interesting about it. You had the payoffs where you need to gather a certain amount before a certain deadline. That works pretty well. But other than that, it didn't feel like you had a big sense of accomplishment. You just grinded enough missions until you felt, okay, I'll finish this boss mission.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it would be very interesting if especially the territory management had some interesting metagame level.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about the missions in Mordheim. It was a kind of a different way to approach it, and we've seen how the players reacted to it, and we've had time to really look at the game and define where we want to take it, and definitely we intend to have something a little bit more fulfilling in terms of the grander schemes.
I like that. Yeah, that sounds really good. Could you tell me a couple of things that you think will make Necromunda different from Mordheim, and not just on a feel or an atmosphere level, but in terms of gameplay or strategy?
Yeah. Well, the main aspects is really verticality, right? And, it's a game that's so. Morning was more close combat with guns. Well, it's the other way around with Necromunda. It's more guns with some close combat. So that opens up a lot of different possibilities, opportunities for us. And being in those environments and exploring the lore as you play and as you have like a tactical game base, it's going to be, I think, a bigger experience than Mordheim. It's going to be a little bit more grander, especially since the scale of things is going to be different. So that's something I think is going to resonate well with players. It's going to give something very different in terms of shooting.
Yeah, the focus on ranged combat is definitely going to change this. Do you think that makes it more or less tactical?
It's a different type of tactical, right? If you're playing mostly melee, positioning and movement is very important. In Necromunda, the tactical aspect is much more about line of sight.
Line of sight and cover.
Yeah, it's a shooter, so that's going to be positioning is still going to be very important, but it's going to be positioning about line of sight rather than be positioned about preparing your melee attack. So the distant aspect, I think, is gonna give us a lot of freedom in for players to be defining their strategies, and we're gonna give a lot of tools also so that to have different elements coming in, not only be a shooter but with other aspects around that's going to be interesting.
So with the added range of combat, does that mean the maps are also going to be bigger?
Yeah, you can expect bigger maps. We're still defining how big, and we're still defining the size of the map, but yeah, it's definitely going to be bigger than Mordheim because having mostly ranged combat, you need more range to be able to proper strategy.
Especially if you have rifles.
Yeah, exactly.
Another thing I was wondering about the thought for that.
Necromunda does that to people.
Really brilliant. Let me see.
Yeah, no worries.
Right. So. In Necromunda, you have the access to these bionics, and that means you can repair injuries. Does that mean that permanent injuries will have less of an effect in Necromunda than they did in
Mordheim? I really cannot say anything about it. We know there's bionics. That's all I can say.
There are bionics.
We acknowledge those bionics, and we're very well aware. You'll see in the game how we handle it.
So that's the question that I forgot. One thing that's really central to how you play Mordheim, and that can be either rewarding or frustrating, is the trade-off between gathering and fighting. Right? If you want to do a map optimally, you kind of want to spread out and grab everything before you start fighting. Is that something you plan to see in Necromunda as well, or will that be more in the background?
We're definitely looking at having a different objective system. It's because like you say, Mordheim, it's all about getting those words through. It was an interesting game, but we definitely want to see into giving players a bigger variety of objectives. How it's implemented, I don't know the details, but it's definitely going to be a variety that makes the game replayable and maps feel fair.
So different kinds of tools, different kinds of objectives. Kill this many people here, take this point there, destroy this,
or gather this thing. So we're still completely building the objective system at this point, where you can expect some more variety than Mordheim.
Will there be hired guns?
Maybe.
Ratskins?
I really don't know the details. We know they're there, but like it's
scouting?
Yeah,
Okay.
Everything
Okay.
in terms of gameplay feature, I would do a great disservice to our design team if I would start joining.
So then let's change things up, because obviously I'm asking all the right wrong questions.
No, that's the right ones.
What can you tell me?
Well, it's we're really here. The interesting thing about Necromunda, it's a beloved franchise that was incredibly popular in the 90s, and now we're taking it again. And our first objective here is also to remind people of what it was, because it's a cult followership for a lot of people, but there's also quite a number of people who need a refresher as to
the 30-something gamers are really enthusiastic, but you need to grab the 15 to 25.
Exactly, because it's super rich. It's a very interesting franchise, and that's what we're trying to accomplish here, is to say, hey guys, here's what's Necromunda, it's what you can expect, and then from now, later on in the development cycle, we're going to be able to show more aspects of it.
So, with Games Workshop reopening the Specialist Games Group and re-releasing Blood Bowl, do you think we'll see a re-release of Necromunda for Games Workshop?
You should ask Games Workshop that question.
I know. I didn't really expect an answer.
It's Games Workshop that people can answer that question. We're making the video game, and we're absolutely happy about that.
Okay. Is there anything else you would like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. To us, it's been a wild ride since we've announced the game a week or 2 weeks ago, and we're so happy about the reception of the community. It's very important to us, and we're super excited to see everyone really excited about us doing this game. I think it's a very nice thing to see a community standing with you into this excitedness of developing new games.
It was one of the first things I heard when Mordheim was coming out. I hope they're going to do Necromunda too. Yeah.
And we were looking at the forums, because we look a lot at the forums, and we could see people talking about it and speculating that we would be doing it. And we were like, we wish we could comment on it, but it was pretty funny to read that, and then seeing the reception from the community when we announced it. It was a nice gift. We feel really grateful to the community.
Yeah, nice. Will it be using the same game engine as Mordheim?
No, we're actually switching to Unreal Engine 4.
Okay.
And we felt like going to bigger environments, and we're going to go PC and consoles at the same time. We felt that Unreal Engine 4 was getting at the point where it's really strong. Epic is developing games on it, so I know it's a tried and tested engine. So yeah, we're super excited about it. It works great, and we're already accomplishing really nice things.
If you had to guess roughly when we could expect this game,
not done. When it's going to be done?
Well, I don't know. Will it be this year?
We're early in the production cycle. Definitely not this year. It's going to be
not this year.
Yeah, but because we want to take the time to really do it properly, and also try it, test it, and iterate on it rather than just rush it.
Better get it right at release.
Exactly, because it's not a reskin, right? A lot of people are worried that it's going to be a reskin of Mordheim or using the same tech, but no. With the fact that we're changing engine, it means that we're rebuilding everything from scratch from the get-go. So it's a really cool thing for us to do, because we're developing a much stronger infrastructure this time, but it also requires quite a bit of time.
Yeah, it's a bigger opportunity, but also a bigger cost.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Well, thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks to you.
Yeah, this was nice.
Yeah, absolutely great interview. You have some really strong questions there.
Thanks.
Alright YouTube, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, remember to leave it a thumbs up at the bottom. And of course, if you'd like to see more videos, do check out the channel and hit subscribe on your top right.